And good morning, everyone. Welcome to week 9. I hope everyone had a good midterm break. I see that most of you scored really well on the midterm, so that's really exciting for me. Hopefully that means that you're grasping the information that we've been covering. Moving right into kind of the second part of the semester, first chapter we're going to be talking about is presenting solutions. So at this point, we have gone through opening the conversation, we have gone through prospecting, we've gone through needs analysis, and now we're going to talk about presenting solutions. So we'll jump right back into it. Chapter 8 in your book. So here are the key terms. You're going to see a lot of these pretty consistently. Maybe some of these you've heard before, but a lot of these are based on presentations. So what type of presentations are you going to be using, whether it's a canned presentation like generally you'll have in your classes, or whether it's something a little more formulated, or a little bit more focused on the customer. There are different types of presentations that we'll be discussing. So presenting solutions. So we are getting close to the finish. You're coming full circle on the sales cycle here. But as I mentioned, we have gone through the opening, we've gone through the needs analysis, and now we've done our listening. We need to start presenting solutions. So presenting solutions is the realization that a customer or client can satisfy needs by purchasing a product or an experience. So essentially, you have gotten to the point where you've listened to the customer, you've taken the time to understand their wants and their needs, and therefore now you have an understanding of who this person is, what they're looking to accomplish, and you have some solutions that can provide a solution for what the customer or client is looking for. So these are tailored recommendations based off of the needs analysis. Obviously, the parts of the process all have very important ties and needs, but knowing that the needs analysis is probably the most important because you're really spending the time again to understand the wants and the needs of each of the customers and clients. And by sharing a tailored recommendation, you're showing that you've listened to this customer and client and therefore have taken your time and done the homework to not just sell someone, but obviously provide them a recommendation based off of a real want and a real need. So as I mentioned, it's really important not to skip steps through this. You can't, just jump right into selling, as we talked about. You can't jump past the needs analysis. And obviously you can't jump past presenting solutions, because without this, you're not really engaging into the transaction, the actual sales process. So keep all in mind that you shouldn't present solutions without really understanding the wants and the needs. Again, we're going to continue to talk about this needs analysis, even though we're past the needs analysis at this point. It's really important to remember and to keep tabs on what it is that the customer and client is really wanting and really needing. So there's a 4-step process called the SPET process that you're going to see. And that process is laid out right here. The first step in that is to summarize the need, the motive, or the problem. So that's really important. You're going through this and you're basically saying, okay, this is what I've heard from you. You're telling them exactly what it is that you've listened to. And this provides an opportunity for the customer or client to correct any sort of information that you have, to clarify, to make sure that, again, that you all are on the same page here and that you're not assuming something or you're not saying something that they are not actually saying. So you summarize the need, the motive, or the problem. The next step is to present the solution. So basically, look something like this. It sounds like what you're saying is yada, yada, yada. Therefore, because of this, I'd like to provide you with this opportunity, which will fulfill this need, this motive, or this problem. And then you're going to explain why. So you're summarizing, you're presenting the solution that you have come up with. Hey, I hear that you really would like to go to more weekend games. So therefore, we're going to offer you this package of weekend tickets. And then you're going to explain why. You're going to explain why this is the situation. These seats will provide you, in a cost-effective way for your entire family to come out to the games and do so on Fridays and Saturdays only, without taking up the financial responsibility of having to buy weekday tickets as well. So you're explaining why, and then you're jumping immediately to, a trial close. So, what do you think about this? How does that sound to you? Are we ready to purchase? Something to that nature. Also include some time to just pause. I know that this can be very uncomfortable in the sales process, but there are plenty of opportunities where we need to just sometimes, as we've talked about all semester, listen, and then listen some more. So take some time to effectively pause, see what the customer thinks. Don't immediately start jumping through different solutions. Start with one solution, stick with that, get some feedback. And then if that's not what they're looking to do, you can jump to the next solution. But until they've said no, or until they've given you feedback off of that, you have to continue to just let it sit and give them a chance to think about it. Some people are different with money. Some people are very spontaneous and are very much on the spot, window shoppers, etc. Others need some time to think. They need some time to process. Neither is wrong. So keep that in mind and don't hesitate to, again, pause and really emphasize what it is that you're talking about. You can see in the book, table 8.1 gives great examples of this process. In the 4-step process, you're summarizing the needs, you're presenting a solution, explaining why you're presenting that solution. Hey, I'm not just trying to get money off of you, but this really sounds like it's going to provide a solution to your want, your need. And then you're actually asking for the close and the trial close. So you're asking for it. You can't just let it sit. You have to actually prompt the quote unquote transactional piece. And just because we're saying transaction here doesn't mean that we are viewing this as a transaction. Again, since we started at the beginning of the semester, the sales process needs to be more of a transformational experience, not just a transactional experience. So make sure that the customer feels that way, but also when it really comes down to it, there is a transaction still taking place. So don't forget that. So here are some of the key principles for presenting solutions that are out there. Again, these are explained much more in detail in your book, but let's go through these. So the first is present benefits when they can be reinforced with information learned in the needs analysis. Again, all comes back to this needs analysis. If you're just throwing out solutions that don't make sense, or if you haven't listened to what the customer is really saying and you're just throwing things out there, it can be really off-putting. Not only are they probably not going to purchase, but you may ruin an opportunity to get any sort of purchase from them in the future as well. You may turn them off from the brand completely. So make sure that you're presenting benefits that can be reinforced by that needs analysis. The second is to explain the value proposition. So explaining the value proposition really is the customized approach at the heart of the proposition. So, the value proposition is essentially the benefit that you can provide based off of the want and the need of the customer. So we're providing this benefit because of X, Y, and Z that the customer told us. Don't be afraid to tell a customer when a product is not in their best interest. That's really important too. Not all business is good business. I feel like I say that more and more these days, especially as I've gotten a little further into my career. Not all business is good business. So, the one thing that you can really do is basically get a short sale, which can ruin the life cycle of that customer. So you want to make sure that you are creating a safe place, that the customer can trust you through this process, and that they don't feel like you're just a used car salesman who's, selling them, anything that they could possibly sell. Rather, you want to make sure that that they have a great experience, and that goes beyond the sales process. So once they've actually purchased whatever it is that they're purchasing from you, you have to make sure that they're having a great time with that product or that service, so that they'll keep coming back to the well, as opposed to just a one-time transaction. Because as we've talked about, it's much easier to keep a client than it is to recruit a new one. Start the presentation of realistic offers with the most expensive and then work down. This is explained pretty deep into the book. And I think it's really important to point out that it says most expensive. You'll have an idea of what it is that you can get out of a customer based off of maybe previous history. Maybe they've come to one game, but they have the potential to come to 10 games. Maybe they've purchased a suite for the first time, but they went with their company. So wasn't individual. So you just need to understand, realistic offers, and don't hesitate to have different solutions written down. Just because you don't get the first solution doesn't mean that the second or the third won't come through. So again, do your homework, make sure that you have different solutions that could possibly fit the wants and the needs, and start with the best package and say, hey, if that doesn't work for you, we can tier these out, or we can take bits and pieces to make sure that it's more customized and much more comfortable for you. See the big picture as well. This is what we were just talking about. Try not to think of this as just a one-time transaction, but rather think of this as a relationship that you're creating to have a great experience for the customer, but also create a long-standing relationship, with this client. So see the big picture. Don't be so short-sighted. Rather think about the longevity. Use social proof to bolster recommendation. Be willing to talk about why a suite, might be more expensive than outfield tickets, or why the tickets behind home plate that include food and drinks and a club room might be more expensive than those behind the dugout, or et cetera. So understand why certain seats are certain ways, and be able to use the social proof to be able to bolster it. Be confident in product and expertise. This goes back to the entire sales process, those skills, those soft skills that are needed. Just be confident, do your homework, understand your products, understand what makes you qualified to be selling this person, because if you don't believe it, then they're not going to believe it. So make sure that you're really, really focusing in on this, the soft skills, the eye contact, pausing, being stern, speaking clearly, and speaking with a good voice. Be confident in everything that you're doing. And then lastly, make sure that you're educating the customer and the client on the product as well. Again, you're the expert here, so make sure that the customer and the client understand that. If you can't educate them on the process or the product, then they're not going to be willing to spend their money with you. So lastly, really all comes down to being able to translate the motives into the benefits. Again, this is the value proposition that we've talked about. Benefits have to outweigh the cost or be equal to the cost the customer is willing to spend. So make sure that you're doing everything that you can to translate the motives into the benefits. For example, you could say, as a motive, the customer might say, hey, I grew up going to games with my dad. I feel a lot of certain way about the St. Louis Cardinals. So, I'm looking for something to be able to feed off of that nostalgia. And basically the benefit could be that you've created so many great memories. Maybe you're going to have the opportunity to do that with your son, like you used to do with your dad, et cetera. So be able to translate the motives into the benefits and understand that you have to fulfill that motive with a benefit, and that all has to outweigh the cost that you're willing to spend. So do not do these things. So these are 3 things that are very common that salespeople will do. And these are all very much mistakes. So the first is presenting benefits that don't match the needs. Again, once the needs of the customer or client is most important, you're having to present benefits that match these needs. So this is a great way that salespeople can get into a bind, because essentially it's saying, I'm not listening to what you're saying. You're just talking and I'm over here. I already have a preconceived notion of what I'm going to be able to present to you. And it doesn't really match, if it doesn't really matter if it matches or not. So make sure that you're not doing that. You have to match the wants and the needs. That's most important. It's a good way to lose a customer. Second is presenting solutions with incomplete information. Again, this kind of ties into the first. Make sure that you're fully understanding, ask your questions to make sure that you're getting all the information that you need to formulate a proper solution to be able to fulfill that want, that need of customer. The third is assuming the customer sees the need as well. You have to spell it out. Absolutely have to spell it out. You can't just look at two points of view and say, all right, this is obvious. We both see this. I'm sure you've seen in your everyday life, communication is extremely important. And sometimes something that is so obvious to you is so far from obvious for someone else. So make sure that you're really, pointing it out, spell it out. This is why, this is what you're looking for. This is the solution that we can provide, and this is why. So this is going to go back, and I'm just going to jump back to the slide talking about the 4-step process. Summarize the need, the motive, or the problem. present this solution and explain why. Notice it doesn't just say present the solution and then you jump to the close. You have to explain why. And if you don't explain why, again, sometimes it's going to be missed, and something that's so obvious to you is not going to be obvious whatsoever to the customer, the client, and you're going to miss out on a potential sale. So lastly, I just say, it's obvious when a salesperson isn't listening. So if you're not asking questions, if you're not listening, you're not going to make the sale. You may get lucky once or twice or here and there, but you're not going to be efficient. You're not going to be effective. So make sure that you're taking the time. And as we've said all semester, listen, and then listen some more. Make sure that you're fully understanding what it is that the customer client is saying, and then be able to use that to your benefit. So there are a million types of presentations that are there. So these are some of the more common presentations that are out there. The first is probably something that you've done in your semester through school, the CAN presentation. Essentially, you're speaking, they're listening, whoever they is. You're hoping that you're on the point, and maybe you're going to have some chance for some questions and some feedback at the end. There have been plenty of situations through my career. For example, when I first started with the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, I had a presentation with the CEO, and we were talking about a new program that we were going to initiate at the training center. I thought I had 15 minutes for a presentation, so I built out the deck that was 12 minutes long. I practiced it over and over. I had slides, I had reasons, and when I walked in, his schedule was back a little bit. So he didn't have nearly as much time. So I got 3 minutes. He basically said, this is too long. Take 2 slides out of this entire deck and present those in 3 minutes. So I had 3 minutes as opposed to a 15-minute time window, and I had to adjust on that. So again, CAN presentation, you speak, they listen. You better make sure that you've done your homework. You better understand who's in the room. You better understand really what is most important and what you need to convey. Because, it could be that you're getting into an elevator with somebody. It could be that they're passing you on the street. Whatever it is, you have to have, kind of different versions of what's most important. Next is a formula presentation. So a formula presentation is a little bit different. There's a little more time built in for interaction with the customer or the client. Typically in this, the salesperson is talking about 65 to 70% of the time. And then you're providing opportunity for the customer and the client to be able to give information as well. Then you have the need satisfaction presentation. So in this is more focused on, the interaction between the customer and the client. The salesperson actually doing more questions, asking more questions, but then sitting back and letting the customer and the client speak. More so as opposed to the CAN presentations or the formula presentations. Next, you have an in-game presentation. This is exactly what you think. Perhaps the customer service person or the salesperson is sitting with a client at a game. Perhaps they're inviting them to a game to show them how great it is. They're basically selling based off of the activation of the product or the service. Then you have a site tour presentation. When I was running business development for the training centers, I used to do site tour presentations all the time. Sometimes it's much better to just show someone, similar to the end game. It's much, easier to showcase to someone what it is that you're actually selling to them, as opposed to just talking about it. And then lastly, you have organized sales events as well. These are typical kind of in the car dealer, the car industry. You see that quite a bit. They'll do certain days where we'll invite people in on campus to be able to experience different things. So what to include in effective sales presentation. So first, you need to make sure that you're making a good first impression, such as life. Deliver an opening that grabs prospects' attention. We've talked about this. There are a number of ways to do that, but we're not going to go into detail because we've talked about all this before. Use storytelling to illustrate why people change and why the customer or the client should care. That's really what you're trying to get across, is why they should care and how you're going to be able to provide them what they're looking for. Create and utilize powerful visuals. There are a bunch of talk about visuals in their book. This could be a PowerPoint. This could be a book. It could be, a shirt that you're wearing or you're giving to them. Several different types of visuals. Understand your audience. We talked about this. If you have limited time, you really need to understand who you're talking to, what you're delivering to them, and why it's going to be important to them. And then finally, just know who's going to be in the room. Similar to the audience, if I'm talking to the director of sales or I'm talking to the marketing person, I'm talking to the CEO, need to understand everybody's role and what messages that you're going to be delivering. If you're talking to a finance person, the most important, part of the process is going to be the financials. So we need to understand that. If you're talking to the marketing person, they're going to be less worried about the financials. They're going to be more worried about how you can package things together and how you can sell them. And then so finally, in summary, in order to present the solutions, you really have to listen. I know we've talked about this until I've been blue in the face, but listen more, understand, and then present your solutions. Use the simple process, 4-step process to guide you. So really, just to go back one more time for that, summarize the need, present the solution, explain why it's important, and have a trial close for that as well. Be able to translate motives into benefits. That's important as well. Go back to the chapter in the book where we talk about how you can translate the motives. Know your audience, clarify your understanding what they're saying, and explain the solution that's best recommendation for your wants and your needs. So going through this process, again, make sure that you're taking the time. It's a really long chapter. So understand the information, why it's important, how it fits into the process, and how you can best do your part, do your homework to really get through this process. So this concludes this chapter. Any questions, comments that you may have, don't hesitate to reach out as always. And keep in mind that you're going to do through your present or through your exercise this week, through your assignment, you're going to be writing out some of these sales scripts. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, don't hesitate to reach out. Hope everyone has a great week.